Well, welcome back, and we're pleased to have Jamie Bryson along with us. I think most people know Jamie, but we'll dive into the weeds of who Jamie is in a second. But I think most of us know that last week a 10-year court case came to an end when Jamie Bryson, along with two other defendants, was acquitted. This court case started back in September 2015 when Jamie, who at that time was best known for the flag protests of 2012 and 2013, offered to act as a witness to the Northern Ireland Assembly's Finance Committee, which was chaired by Sinn Féin's Daithí McCann. At that time, the committee was conducting an investigation into the controversial sale of the Northern Irish assets held by NAMA, which was the bad bank set up by the Republic of Ireland to manage the crisis through 2008 and 2009. And they were selling to an American company called Cerberus for $1.2 billion. Jamie Bryson went to the committee to give evidence, and he repeated claims under parliamentary privilege, which he had already made on his personal blog. And they were claims of serious financial misconduct against several public figures, one of which was the DUP leader, Peter Robinson. These allegations have been denied by each of the public figures who were named. However, the evidence took a turn a year later when private Twitter messages from Bryson to Mackay and also his associate Thomas O'Hara, a volunteer for Sinn Féin, were leaked to journalist Alison Morris in August 2016. It's alleged that these messages suggested possible coordination between Jamie Bryson, Daithí Mackay and Thomas O'Hara to shape committee testimony. Mackay resigned, and public admitted that his interactions had been inappropriate, ill-advised and wrong, but not criminal. That view was one that was supported by the judge last week when the case concluded and all three defendants were acquitted. Jamie, it's been 10 years that you've been going through this court case. You're 1 week on from the judgment. How do you feel now?
Well, look, obviously, as I said at the time, anybody going through a Crown Court case, no matter how, tough anybody purports to be or what type of persona you have, it's a horrible and a very difficult experience. So, undoubtedly it was a difficult experience, despite the fact that day one, we knew that this case was a monstrous case. I think if you get the opportunity to read Gordon Carr's judgment, which apart from his little agree to disagree moment with me in the middle, is actually a very good judgment in my view. And he makes the point and says, in 300 years of this offence, there's never been this type of charge brought in relation to parliamentary proceedings. And he actually says, I'm not going to extend the law. So they essentially wanted him to extend the law to places where it had never been before. So yes, it was difficult. It's a very interesting case. And once the dust settles, we've the time to look back. I think it will maybe shape that area of law going forward. I certainly don't think anybody's going to be prosecuted again for breaching the Northern Ireland Assembly Code of Conduct, I would have to say.
Well, just get into the weeds of that a little bit. So you're alleging that this kind of behaviour happens all day, every day, that people go to committees, they discuss their evidence, they appear before the committee, and this is just normal procedure and practice. So if it is normal procedure and practice, why did the case go for 10 years? Surely the DPP should have just said, this is normal procedure and practice. The elements of the prosecution aren't met. We'll just leave it there. So why was this relentlessly pursued, do you think?
Well, I think there was a political agenda behind it from the start. And then I think that they worked themselves in to spend so much money on the case and had dug into it for so long that they couldn't walk away from it. But the important thing is this: they tried to take refuge in this point that they got through no bill and all of that. But it was only at the end of the election stage when they were pinned down and the judge said, "What exactly is the legal duty here?" Because as you'll know, Tim, as a barrister, there has to be a legal duty that you have breached for misconduct in public office. You have to breach a legal duty. And the judge said, well, what is the legal duty? Now, at the direction stage, the prosecution told the court that the Northern Ireland Assembly Code of Conduct was a statutory duty. He accepted that for the purposes of direction stage. It was only when it came, I was first to give evidence, and the first subject we covered is, I pointed out to the prosecution, this is not a statutory code. It's not like the ministerial code. It's self-regulation. And you could see Gordon Carr at that stage kind of thinking, what are we doing here? There's no legal duty. Where's the legal duty? And ultimately, that's one of the points the case fell apart on. But it also fell apart. And if you read the final paragraphs, Gordon Carr, the prosecution said, so not only do you have to breach a legal duty, but there has to be public harm, and it has to reach a very high level of seriousness. So there was no legal duty, but Gordon Kerr said that the prosecution tried to say, well, by naming these people, you could have impinged upon the NCA investigation. Now, there was no live proceedings, so it was just an investigation. As an aside, if that's correct, then no media can report on anything before the case is live. We have the Contempt of Court Act when cases are live, but before live cases, we stop the media reporting on anything. So they said it could be a risk of the NCA. Gordon Kerr said you called no evidence to that at all. There's no evidence of any risk to the NCA. They then said, well, it was serious because the committee was misled. Gordon Kerr said you didn't call evidence to a single member of the committee. And in fact, the two members who opposed me most strenuously, Jim Wells and Paul Girvan, had given affidavits to the PPS to say, look, this is politics. We've no issue with this. But interestingly, Gordon Kerr said, even if the prosecution had established the committee were misled, even if they had established there was interference with the NCA investigation, it still wouldn't have been serious enough to amount to the offence. And that's pretty damning.
I didn't think I'd agree with Jamie Bryson on all that much when it comes to storm sources, but I actually agree on that. This kind of thing of people talking behind the scenes, communicating behind the scenes on the QT, that is the stuff of politics, and there is nothing actually wrong with it. It's in part how politics works. And I know there are other silly rules, like, for example, everything that goes to the executive table is supposed to be confidential, but yet parties are expected to consult their party leadership and the party team about executive business. Well, how do they do it if they don't show them what's going on, which is another breach. So on that one, all day long, it should never have been taken, the case. It should never have taken 10 years, and there ought to be a bit more accountability for those who made it last so long. But Jamie, just a question on it. Where do you think the original agitation around this is going? Because it's been 10 years also with no results on anything to do with NAMA.
Well, to not get into the detail of, I don't want to prejudice any. There is a live case at the minute, so two of the people named are before the courts, so that'll take its own course in due course. But there's still files with the PPS in respect of other individuals. So, I think I did, funny enough, run in the BBC to somebody from the SDLP not long ago who, to be fair to them, said to me privately that there's something absolutely scandalous that me and Dahi Mackay, who, even taken at its height, had tried to expose corruption. We're the only people that found ourselves in court for this. And an important thing to note is, and the prosecution conceded this, they put it in black and white, they didn't contest the truth of what I said. The prosecution case was not that I'd give false evidence or there was malicious evidence put together. They said in writing, we don't contest the truthfulness of the evidence. Now, they didn't endorse it as true either, as you wouldn't expect them to, but they didn't contest a word of it as being untrue.
But you said a few minutes ago when you were answering about the case and why the case was taken. You said it was political interference or words to that effect. Like, what do you mean by that? What is the political interference against you, or the political motivation against you?
Well, as a barrister, you'll know, and you'll find this interesting. So the public office holder in this case was Dahi Mackay. He was the first person on the indictment. Me. The whole case, if you look at the prosecution's submissions, of the 20 pages of them, 19 of them were about me. And Dahi Mackay was almost, I feel sorry for him, a scapegoat in all of this. This was all about getting me, and I think that's been going on for a long time. There's been 13 years.
But why? But who wants to get you? Because you said this about getting you. Well, who wants to get you?
I think that there's as I call them, the latte drinking liberal elite establishment. It's not about me as a person. It's about what I symbolize, an uppity loyalist who thinks that he's going to engage in the world of journalism, he's going to engage in the bar, who appear before the courts. Who does this guy think he is to interfere in our privileged elite society, which has grown up post 1998? And so they had to find some way of destroying me, and you can see that. Like, I mean,
but what do you mean? What do you mean destroying you? Right? Because the Jamie Bryson that we see publicly on Twitter. We'll maybe talk in a minute about the private Jamie Bryson, but Jamie Bryson we see public on Twitter loves all this agitation, loves to be the man out making the big political comments. So surely that they're just on your pitch playing your game.
Well, no, but I've no problem engaging in the rough and tumble of politics. But when you start to use a criminal law to maliciously engage in a witch hunt against somebody, for 13 years, there's been case after case, and they have all failed, all of them. ridiculous case after ridiculous case. I mean, you will talk about, you know, the SIA case, which is a body which regulates door supervisors, which said I didn't have a door license, an offence for which nobody in the United Kingdom has ever been arrested. I was arrested, held in a police station, and at the end of the case, what happened? And you'll know, Tim, how extraordinary this is. The court ordered them to pay me costs because so outrageous was the case. But 6 years of my life, I don't care about the rough and tumble of politics. People can take me on all day long. But using the criminal law to maliciously target a political opponent, for me, is scandalous. Scandalous.
But who's maliciously using the law? So I feel what you're saying is there's some coordinated effort that whoever, you know, was responsible for the original case on the doorman legislation, whoever's responsible for this, you're almost suggesting all of those people are coordinating to conspire against you.
I'm not sure that it's always coordinated, but there is some type of effect that, and again, I don't think this is about me as an individual. I think it's about what I symbolize, that it does trigger in certain people some type of fury that they have to do something about this, and they will do anything to stop this, because it's what I symbolize. You know, it's this uppity loyalist who says what some people feel are controversial. I think it's very mainstream things on social media, and how dare this guy think that he's going to, you know, be part of our elite arena, which we dominate, and who does he think he is? So, and there's been and because I always say, young loyalists, see if you put a balaclava on and you go out in the streets and start petrol bombing and doing all of that, actually, you know, the media, the establishment don't particularly mind that, because you're playing into the stereotype. It's much more difficult whenever you put a shirt and a tie on and you say, no, I'm going to engage in the media. I'm going to go to the bar and I'm going to fight you in the courts. And they don't know how to deal with that, because they haven't really experienced that from loyalism post 1998 at all. Like, how many people do you know who are unashamed open loyalists who are members of the bar?
But so that's interesting, because I mean, we can maybe touch on who is. Thanks, yeah, me he's suggesting, but who is Jamie Bryson, right? Is Jamie Bryson the flag protester, the person who wants to cause controversy, or is Jamie Bryson the lawyer, the intelligent guy who can look? I don't think people appreciate this, and I get very frustrated when I read people's comments on your Twitter. I'm sure you get more frustrated than me, and they start to make disparaging remarks. I cannot tell you, anybody who thinks this is wrong, I cannot tell you how difficult it is to stand up in the High Court and run a judicial review. Well, even if you're a barrister 5, 6, 10 years standing, and you've done that, you've written the pre-action protocols, you've written the affidavits, you've stood in court, and to do that is difficult. So who is Jamie Bryson, the protester who loves controversy, or the intelligent guy who's standing up in court and delivering complex legal arguments with skill and wit and wisdom? You know, who is Jamie?
Well, everybody changes as they develop, you know. So who Jamie was in 2013-14, when David came down actually and interviewed me in Bangor train station one time back in 2013-14. So who that person? Am I that same person now? No, I'm not. Will I be the same person in next year, the year after? No, I'm not. Would I do things differently than I've done in the past? Yeah. Did I say and do some immature things in the past that I look back on now and say, what was I doing? What was I thinking? I wouldn't advise anybody to do that. Yeah, I do. I accept that all day long. But didn't we all do things in our 20s, in our 30s? You know, I'm still in my 30s, maybe the only one, but didn't we all do things where we look back and think, you know, what was I doing? So I'm at a stage in my life where I think, and you know, number one, I love the law, and you'll know this, Tim. You know, I'm fascinated by it. It's an obsession of mine. I absolutely love it. But also, I do see it as a political tool, and I think it's the best means by which to advance the cause as well. So I suppose I've changed as a person, developed as a person, and you know, will keep changing and developing, because I hope I'll keep learning, and I'll maybe look back in 5 years and say, God, what I did 5 years ago, I wouldn't do that now, you know, but who knows? But
Right. Right. Enough of this barrister's loving. Let's get down to some serious business here. I'm going to ignore the fact that that both Jamies are still alive and well, because I saw a couple of tweets this afternoon. The asbestos bonfire must go ahead, etc., etc. And the guys in my gosh will have a good sense of humour. Anyway, that's not what I want to ask about. I also want to know about Jamie, the person. And I was fascinated in a recent interview. You said that you're very close friends with John Larkin. Although listening to you and Tim together this afternoon, that doesn't now surprise me. But what is your relationship with John Larkin? And even more interestingly, what's your relationship with Stephen Nolan?
Well, look, John, I've been very close to John probably the last 6 years, so we socialised together, but he has been somewhat of a mentor to me in terms of legally, you know. He's somebody and I said this on the one last week, you know, see, for somebody like John, particularly in Iceland, and you have to remember, when me and John first became friends was 5-6 years ago, I was a lot more controversial than I am now, and, you know, he didn't shy away from me, and that's he judged me as I am, take me as I am, give me an opportunity, took me under his wing to some respect in terms of the law. So we've developed a friendship.
Why do you think he did that? Because that, as you say, it's quite a step to take. Yeah.
Because I think, and you even see this when John was the Attorney General, I think John likes a little guy. And I think he's saying, you know, here's a guy who is standing up against the establishment. People's trying to keep him out, force him out, and he likes to help people like that. So, I mean, there's nothing in it for him. You know, I mean, there's no conceivable gain in it for John at all, bar my wit, wisdom, and good friendship. But, you know, apart from that, there's certainly no professional gain in it for him. But I think he likes to see people do well, and he's very much a man. You know, Tim knows John very well as well. John's very much a man of his own mind. And, you know, if 100 people say to John, you know, stay away from that guy, that's probably more likely to make John say, well, no, I won't. He's his own mind. So, yeah, very close with John. And, you know, and Stephen, yeah, look, I'd be friendly with Stephen. You know,
have you ever been down at Fantasy Island? Like, have you ever have you ever gone out and had dinner with Nolan? Or anything like that?
I don't think. I mean, we don't socialise together, but yeah, look, you know, I'd class him to some degree as a friend, you know. But I mean,
well, I think it's fair to say, Jamie, like myself and yourself, we've been out and we've discussed the law, and we've disagreed, and we've had. Do
you accept, by the way, you got it wrong on Donaldson Steele yet? Do you accept that?
Well, we'll get you back on to talk about that so later. But I do think we need. I think it leads on to a question that I want to ask you now, just as we finish. You know, I do think we need to make Northern Ireland work, and I think that's we've discussed this privately. We've been out for drinks. We've thrashed all this out. Well, maybe not fully thrashed it out because we still disagree. But you know, today, and with this, we've got to finish. But I do have to ask you this before you go. Look, on the one hand, today we've got a controversy about a bonfire again. And without a doubt, bonfires are cultural expressions. They are cultural expressions not just here in Northern Ireland, across the UK, across Northern Europe, across the world. Bonfires are cultural expressions. That's not in dispute. But I think, you know, we also have to recognise that public safety is important. You're not going to light a bonfire that's lopsided and thousands of people could be injured. You'd stop that bonfire from being lit. And I think we all would say if there's a public safety issue, we need to act on that, even if it's a low and minimal risk, maybe a 5% risk of a public safety issue. So how can you tweet what you're tweeting today in respect of Belfast City Council when there is a public safety issue? Should we not be just saying, lads, we need to find another site for this bonfire? The public safety risk is too great.
Well, this is why this argument has no logic. Everything you do in life carries with it a risk. There's no risk-free bonfires anywhere at all. People who go to the northwest and do motorcycle racing, it's not without risk. So every public event has a element of risk. So it's a matter of degree. So the question here is, and the SDLP seem to now in the last 2 days move to the position of if there's any risk, which seems to, with respect, be the position you've almost articulated. If there's any public safety risk, then there should be no bonfire. Well, there'll never be any bonfire then, because there's no risk-free bonfires. It's impossible to achieve. It's impossible to have the northwest, the motorcycling without risk.
But surely, Jamie, non-political people like health people and electricity people are saying there's substantial risk here.
Well, no, they didn't.
They can't be part of the overall nationalist conspiracy to destroy loyalist culture. You know.
But they didn't say
that.
that.
I mean, NIE issued a warning. NIE did.
What they said is that they had put in place mitigations to reduce the risk. So the risk has been reduced down to what those agencies felt was a manageable level. And what we've then had is political agitation to come in over the top of that to create a situation where, look, does anybody actually think that bonfire is not going to be lit? You know, one way or another, that bonfire is going to be lit. So what is all of this achieving? They're going to essentially bring in contractors, controversy to an interface area. We all know how that's inevitably going to end. The bonfire is going to be lit. And what has been achieved? Absolutely nothing.
Wouldn't you be better providing leadership and going down to that site and say, lads, let's move this. Let's move this. Let's get a safe place to light this.
No, because every year there's something else. So if you moved it, there'll be some. This is not about, for nationalist politicians who are whipping this up, this is not about public safety. This is about eradicating bonfires. That's what they ultimately want.
No.
Because they didn't vote today. They didn't vote today to go in and remove the asbestos. Why not just go in and remove the asbestos? Why not go in and reduce the bonfire if there's an issue? They went in to take it down, take it away,
indeed?
Remove it. Why don't you remove this?
Unfortunately, I think we're getting heated up there now. There's nearly going to be a fight breaking out between Jamie and Michael, so I need to step in and say, Jamie, thanks so much. Well, let's just have the agreement, Michael, at the start. Now, thanks very much, Jamie, for coming along with us. We've got to end it there.
To be continued.
Well, we need to get you, me, Michael, John Larkin out to the pub, and we'll thrash bonfires out.
Absolutely, certainly. John's a big bonfire fan.
But things have changed, like the tires have gone, you know.
Yeah,
we can make progress.
See, to be fair to the young lads, they have been working with statutory agencies to try and put solutions in place, you know, so there's a lot more to this story than meets the eye in the headlines.
Jamie, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.